Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Nigel's Land Rover channel, and this is part 15 now, I believe, of this engine build. And it's actually why does the light keep going up and down? Why does it do that? It's actually this should be part 16, but I've done another bit. If you notice, the front pulley's missing that big bracket. The bearing came, I fitted the bearing. I've done a full video on how I fitted it. I put it all back together as stock, as it was, and then I changed my mind and didn't like something. So that video will be up maybe tomorrow, so you'll see that one. And basically I've done some machining work and made it all a bit sort of better, really. So have a look at that when it comes along. I won't call that part number or anything because it's sort of a separate thing, really. It's about how to change that bearing. So as you can see, I've got the turbo on the bench here. No, you can't see, I've got the turbo on the bench here. You've got the engine behind me. And I've been waiting for these gaskets to come. I ordered these off of eBay. That was, I can't remember the name of the guy now. I think it's Summit Turbos. They basically do a set of gaskets for the turbo. There's a paper gasket in there. You can see this one behind, which you don't really need because the turbo's got a rubber O-ring in it. So we don't need that paper one. But the other three I should be using. We've got the little paper one there for the oil drain. And then we've got the actual gasket, the turbo to manifold, and then the turbo to downpipe. And talking about downpipes, I'm going to have something quite shiny to show you soon, I think. So we shall see how that looks. So what we need to do is get on now and get this turbo fitted, and then go from there. The nuts on the studs on the manifold. Oh, sorry, the studs in the studs in the manifold. The threads were a bit damaged and the nuts a bit damaged, so I've put new studs in there, and I've got some locking nuts from a Toyota actually, and these are, I don't know if you can see that close, but they're actually got 3 quimps on them, so they're very similar to the Land Rover ones where they quimp them in 2 places. So they're sort of self-locking, but obviously it needs to be a metallic self-lock, because if they use the nylon would just melt, you know, in that position. So I'm going to try them and see how they go. So without further ado, let's move the camera and we'll get the turbo bolted on. Okay, first things first, we'll put the gasket on. It's a metal gasket, single layer, and it only goes one way. It's basically going to put the turbo on. I'm going to grab a nut because it's going to want to fall over. I really should have put the engine over on its side, which would make life a lot easier. So we can lift that on like so, get that stud through the gasket like so, get it on, and then we can put this nut on here, and that is going to support it for us. It can hang there, and then we can grab the other 2 nuts and put these on. If these come loose, I'll just have to buy the genuine Land Rover ones. But the trouble was, I looked online, and what's listed as genuine Land Rover I don't believe is genuine Land Rover at all. It's the same with the studs. There's a lot of fittings and stuff that have been changed, been superseded, and they aren't the same as what was on here. So we'll just go around and tighten these evenly. I couldn't find any mention of what torque you have to be, so I'm just going to do them up sort of, I don't know, 18-20 pounds-feet, which is kind of about right for an M8. There we go. Just going another dip, just to make sure that gasket's nicely compressed. And there we go, there's the turbo fitted. The one thing I did do on the bottom, you've got the oil drain. I cleaned that face off and everything and took the masking tape off, because as you can see I've painted everything. I cleaned it up and took the masking tape off before I fitted it, because it's a bit difficult to get to when it's upside down. So the next thing now I'm going to do is put the oil drain on. Okay, so I've tipped the engine over on its side now, you can see things a bit better. You don't get a new O-ring with this gasket set, you don't get a new O-ring with the Victor Wright set. I've looked at the box of O-rings I've got, and as per usual, the right size isn't in there. I don't know why I ever bothered buying those, because they never seem to have the right one in there. So this pipe goes in here, you've got a gasket that goes up in here on the end of there like that. On here is an O-ring and it just pushes into that bore. So we're going to get it positioned on the top, and then we're just going to push the O-ring in so it just enters that hole. And then we've got a bracket and an M8 bolt. The bracket is going to slot into the pipe just like so, with a little click, and then put the bolt in. I'll just check my torque manuals. And through the miracle of editing, here I am back with a torque wrench and everything all done. And that's got to be done up to 22 Newton meters. There we go. So that's that held in place. It can still move around. As you can see, what it's doing is stopping it falling out. And we are going to fit this pipe. Now this reminds me of back in the day. I built a Volvo 850R engine, rebuilt it with my own car, and while I was doing this actual bit here, a neighbour came and said, "Can you have a look at my lawnmower for me?" I said, "I'm sorry, please, I cannot be disturbed, I need to get this done." "Oh no, so it won't take a minute, please just leave me, I need to get this done." "I'll just have a quick look, it's going to rain later." Oh. So I went away, fixed his lawnmower for him, came back, thought, right, drain pipes on, everything, job done. First time I started the car up, pumped a gallon of oil out onto the driveway. I never forgave him for that, and now I don't do any engine work with anybody else around. So if anybody pops around for a beer or whatever, I don't do any work when they're here. And I'd advise you do the same, guys, because it is so easy, you know, to get this to this stage, pop the bolt in, you know, and walk away, and then come back tomorrow and think, right, I've done that, that's all done, and you actually realise that actually you haven't at all. Let's just pull them down first. There we go. Hopefully that won't leak. If it does, it'll have to have some silicone. So that's that done. So now we've got to get there's some brackets and stuff that go on there, and we've also got the dipstick and the engine mount to go on, so we'll get that done. Right, so time to fit the dipstick. I haven't painted this, and I'm not going to because it doesn't need it. It's got a slight bit of corrosion there. It's so close to the exhaust it'll probably burn any paint that I've got off anyway, so I'm just going to fit it as it is. So then we can put that in like that. That should drop down into there. We've got oil on this, so it should go in. Come on. He says. Oh, that is in. I'm not sure that is in at all, actually. There we go. It just wanted to roll about a bit. And we've got an M8 20 bolt here to hold the top end of it. Better bolt holding this on than you have holding the turbo drain. So 10mm spannier. Just nip that. I'm not going to worry about torque and stuff on that, it's just an ancillary. And then we can push the dipstick down in. That's that done. Now we've got to look at the turbo feed pipe side. Okay, so we're going to fit the feed pipe, and you've got this flexible heat resistant pipe. This is one that came off. I've given it a good clean, good blowout. It's all good. Faces are all clean. Make sure the faces are always nice and spotless, no burrs on them, no edges, no nothing. And then always replace the copper washers. So unfortunately I can't replace these upper copper washers because they look to be a custom size, so I can't replace them, but we can put the banjo bolt through, and then a new copper washer on here like so. And then, as with any fitting, pipe fitting, what we're going to do is we're going to put it in and not tighten anything up. Let's just put that, it's not even finger tight. And then do the same on this one at the turbo end. I know you can't see anything, so I'll just have to talk you through it. So I'm going to bring this up and then down into the turbo. And we've got to tighten these up. And the critical thing here, this is why you don't tighten anything up initially. The critical thing here is to make sure that the pipe isn't touching anywhere. Okay, it must be down, running down here between the turbo unit and not touching the sides at all. So I'm kind of hoping that when I turn this, it doesn't turn the pipe. I hope it turns the washers. So it's got to be done up to 35 Newton meters. So as you can see, I jammed the screwdriver next to it to keep it over, and it's actually gone too much the other way. Okay, so now we can look at getting the right hand engine mount on. There we got all this pipe work and everything on, so nothing's going to get in the way. So that can go over there. Again, don't forget your washers. That's those four in. Again, if you can't get your bolts in finger tight, come out, check the threads, check there's nothing in there. Don't ever just go winding in, damaging stuff. These go to 63 Newton meters. There we go, and I think that is about as far as I can go without putting the front on, so see you in a minute. Okay, so as if by magic, here we are a few days later. Front pulley assembly is back on, all nice. Got the pulley on there as well, pulley on there, and the pulley on the back here is on. That's all bolted down, and of course bolted down in the side there too. So the next part of the assembly, we're going to look at getting this big aluminium casting on the side, and this is where your air conditioning and your alternator and your belt tensioner bolts too. So if you don't have aircon like I don't, it's this useless piece of aluminium sitting up here, which I think would have been a better place to put the alternator, to be honest, on an off-road vehicle, but hey, what do I know? So here it is here on the bench, and there's some special notes here. One is the manual states says 8 bolts, there's actually 9, and the other thing is there's nowhere in the manual does it mention these things here. Okay, now if you look from the side, you can see that these actually screw in, and this is what you're going to bolt down to on here. Okay, so you're going to bolt through here, and then on the back side of that you've got this adjustable, and that's to allow for the variation in the ladder frame. So so basically what we're going to do is, sorry, not the ladder frame, the head, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's the head. So basically what I've done, when I took it apart, I made a note of all the bolt positions. So if you look in here, you can see, you can read my writing, if you have actually got one stripped down and you didn't make a note, you've got a 1 times M8 by 30 at the top. That's the single one. And then there's 2 M8 by 52 with a washer. So these are those here with a washer, and I think they're going to go into those two I just mentioned. Then you've got two M8x50s down the side here, a normal M8x50s without a washer. And then you've got two M8x30s in the bottom and two M8x30s up the side there. So we'll put all them in, I'll show you all that anyway. I'll also show you how to use these in case you're not aware. But the thing to do is when you start is wind them right in. Okay, wind them right in so they're in as far as they can go. If they are stiff on yours or current, it's a 9mm Allen key, fits down from this side, and you can, as you can see, you can wind them. You can wind them in and out like that. Okay, with a 9mm Allen key. Shame they didn't use an 8, wouldn't it? Never mind. So that's it then. Basically, this is all cleaned up and ready to go on. So we'll get this bolted on. The manual states that these bolts should all be 25 Newton meters, which seems about right for an M8 bolt. So we'll get them all in first and then and go from there. Just another quick note on this casting, you'll see, if you look closely, it's got numbers on it. You can see 2 and 3 here, and there's a 1 hiding away, whereas I figured there, you've got a 1 there, and then this one's 4 and this one's 9. So basically that's going to be the tightening sequence, which I'm not quite sure is right, but we'll follow it anyway. But again, there's no mention of that in the manual whatsoever, so you kind of left to pick these things up yourself as you go along. Right, so we'll put the M8x30s in first. So the actual bracket's going to go on this way. Get it in position. I can find the right position. There we go. It goes in like that. So that's going to sit in there. Up a bit. There we go. So down the bottom here we've got two M8x30s. So they're all M8, so I'll just, from now on, I'll just say length. So these two here are 30. And then the one on its own at the top, that one is also a 30. And then we've got these two down here that you can't really see down in, but there's that one there is an M8x30. That one doesn't even get mentioned in the manual. And then this one here is way, way down deep inside. In. If it's even gone into a thread, that is, I think it has. That's better. Obviously I'm not doing these up or even having them down to touch, I'm just screwing them in most of the way. That one feels a little tight, it feels like it's rubbing. And then this one on its own at the top here can go in. Then we've got two M8x50s without the washer, and they're going down, one in there and one in there. So this turbo elbow is going to get in the way. Can't find the oh, she said, there we are. That turbo I was getting, I'm going to get these wound in and then I'll be back. Okay, I've moved you around now to the back of the engine so I can show you these adjuster things I'm talking about, which are down in here. So if I zoom you in, okay, so you can see this is what I'm talking about down in here. Alright, and when I put the Allen key in, you'll see blankies go in. Come on. You can see that turning now, so I can wind that down. Easy to use my fingers. The turbo's getting in the way. The bracket's supposed to go on before the turbo, I think. Or if the manual doesn't say to, it's my advice. But then you'd have trouble getting to the manifold bolts there if you haven't taken your turbo off the manifold. So that's coming on there. You can see it's coming down and touching. So I'm just going to do that so it just touches. These are all just nipped down. Okay, so I'm just going to check that one is actually nipped down. Yes. So then we can just wind that adjuster down, just so it just touches. I don't know if you'll see anything, but there's the other one behind. Don't know if you can see anything on there. You can just see it turning in the background. I'll wind that one down the same. Just touches. And then we can put the other two bolts in, which are M8 by 52 with washers. They can go in like so. Come in with the ratchet. As you can see, I've got a UJ on there now, so it's all floppy. Just wind them in. There we go. Right, so now we just wind all these in and torque them all down to 25 Newton meters. So number 1 here. Number 2 is down here. I should really take the UJ off, but this is just laziness. 4. And then this one here is 5. And then 6. It's up here on its own. And then 7. Awkward position there. And I'm going to take that UJ off. Sorry for the clutter. 8. And then 9. Okay, so I'm just going to go around and check them. There we are. So I can check the other two now with the UJ and then I'll be back. Okay, so we can whip through some of our accessory bits and pieces now. This is the tensioner all cleaned up with the pulley all freshly painted. This is going to go on. Now the manual says for this 25 Newton meters. Now, I think that's an error because this is an M10 bolt and there's no way an M10 bolt is going to be done up at 25 Newton meters, especially when it's got about an inch of thread engagement in the casting, so I'm going to go tighter than that. Again, this manual is just, it's a big cause for concern, shall we say. So there's 25 Newton meters, there's nothing, so I'm going to go a bit tighter, there we go. I don't want that falling off. And then we've got the pulley to go on here. Next up is the alternator, and that's going to be held in with 3 M10 by 110mm bolts. So I'm just going to put one through there and just get that to go in without dropping anything. Looks like we have an issue with our thread. So let's take that away and have a look. Yes, we have some damage in the thread there, so I'll have to tap that out. Okay, so if we look in there, we can see on that threaded hole, we can see we've got some damage. It looks like when I've taken the alternator off, I've pulled the thread. So this just goes to show exactly what I'm talking about when I say about not using these electric guns to just wind everything in. If I'd have used an electric gun, I wouldn't have felt that, and I could have ripped the thread out, which would have meant helicoiling and everything. So what I've got here is an M10 tap. I can just wind that in just to clean that thread out. It looks like it may have had a bit of corrosion in there or something. So you can see now we've got a much better looking thread in there. And I haven't lubricated it purely because I'm just chasing the thread. This is what, when there's a thread already there, all you're doing is cleaning it out. It's known as chasing the thread. If you're cutting a thread, you should really lubricate it, especially in aluminium, because it can pick up and just rip the threads out. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to just give that a quick go out with the airline and then we'll start again. Okay, so that's the alternator installed now. The other thing I did, just as a quick check, I've got this card here, which is the first long straight edge I can put my hand on. And I just laid the card across the crank pulley. You can't see what I'm doing, can you? Just laid the card across the crank pulley like so. Okay, so it's touching on both sides. You just make sure that you're kind of flush with the alternator pulley. You don't want it to, there is a little bit of adjustment there. You don't want it too far out, otherwise you'll be putting a side load on the belt. So there we go. In fact, I think I'll do that properly with a plastic. I'm just going to get a plastic straight edge, and I'll okay. So that's on, and I've checked the alignment, all looking hunky dory. So that's good. Last thing we've got is this. We've got this nut that goes on the back with the rubber cover on it. That's for the main electrical connector. So we just put that on now, finger tight. We'll be putting the wiring loom on very shortly. The other thing to check on while you've got the alternator is they got one of these stupid modern ideas, this bloody slipper clutch in it. So you can see that if you watch inside here, you can see the alternator moving, and then you can see that I can turn the pulley. So it's got like a slipper in it, so make sure that's all good. If it's raunchy or noisy or got any play in it or anything, probably best to replace it. So I think there's special tools involved for that as well. So moving on now, we've got to fit the engine lifting bracket. Okay, so there are 4 bolts that hold the lifting bracket on, even though the manual says 3. And as you can see, I've painted them. So I've got 4 bolts here, all nicely painted. And I don't know if you can see on the end here. So I've got the 4 bolts here, all nicely painted. And if you see on the ends, these are marked with 8.8, and this one's marked with 10.9. So I've had a look through, and it looks like the lifting bracket is held on with 4 8.8 bolts, and the EGR valve is 2 10.9s. So make sure you're using the right bolts in the right places, guys. So I've had to paint another bolt head, so I'll put it on for now with 3, and then I'll add the missing bolt later when the paint dries. So we can just pop this on here. So we'll pop a bolt in there. Another one in here, and then another one in there, and then we'll wind those in and we'll torque them up to 10 Newton meters, I think it was 10 or 12 or something. So we'll have a look in a minute and we'll get them torqued up. Okay, so next to go on is the water pump. I've got the engine tipped up the other way now, and we can see the water pump is actually bolted to the side of the block here. And in what I think is an absolutely pathetic design, they've got oil gallery holes here, and these are for feeding oil through the water pump body to feed the vacuum pump, and they always leak. Now, it's just a pathetic design. Why they couldn't put a couple of unions on the vacuum pump and have it fed like a turbo, I don't know, but this is just pathetic. So I'm going to use, all you've got to go in there is a gasket, like so. Gasket goes in between the water pump and the block. So I'm going to use a drop of Hylamar, as you know I like to do, and that should help make things a little bit better. Now I'm afraid you can't really see very much here, but I'll leave the camera on anyway. So what I'm doing is putting a drop of Hylamar, make sure my finger's clean first. So I'm going to put a drop of Hylamar on the block face, just a very light smearing. Okay, and this is really just purely to fill in the machining marks on the block, and I'll do the same on the aluminium casting of the water pump. And as I say, it's literally just to help fill in the machining marks. There we go, I've done that one as well. So give my finger a quick wipe, it's sticky. And I should place the gasket on. And then we've got doweled holes, I think. Look at the wrong face. Yes, we've got doweled holes here and here. So the water pump's going to drop on. Better if I put the gasket on here, isn't it? So I'll put the gasket on the water pump, and then we'll drop the water pump onto the engine like so. And we've got 3 M8 by 70 bolts, and we've got 1 M8 by 110 bolt, and these have got to be torqued up to 23 Newton meters. So I'm going to get these all spun down, and then we're going to pull them down nice and even, so we get a nice even spread across that gasket. But this, to me, you can see the holes here where the oil feeds up through. It is just such a pathetic design. Why they couldn't machine some O-ring grooves in there or something, I don't know. Again, it's just cost, isn't it? But so we'll pull that one, that one, that one, and we'll keep going diagonally to compress that gasket evenly. They're all down now and sort of they've stopped compressing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's the front of the engine complete, and as you can see now I've got the vacuum pump on. I've used the old gasket and Hylamar because looking online at pictures of gaskets, the original gasket looks better made than any other one I've seen. I don't know what the make is, but it's got like a semicircular, almost like the old GWR trains had over there, steam trains had on the over the wheels. It's got that sort of symbol on it with no whiting in it. I'm assuming it's Wabco, but it's definitely a high quality item. It's got moulded in O-rings, and they were in perfect condition. So tiny bit of Hylamar around the outside of the O-rings. Let's see if it leaks. It weeped before. It was actually stained with oil, but not dripping or anything. So let's see. I think that gasket looks a lot better, but it's actually a very easy component to replace while it's in situ. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. If it does leak, we'll get another gasket. We'll do something else. Why they couldn't machine O-ring grooves in there, I do not know. But it's just, you know, you've just got flat faces, face to face, with a compressed O-ring in a gasket. Crap design. And then also they've got 2 bolts here at the front and 1 bolt here, and yet the oil feeds are over here. So it's all wrong. It's got everything against it. It's just junk. So there we go. Bad design. So now we're going to move on to the EGR and look at a few bits and pieces there. Okay, so on the bench here we've got all the components of the EGR system, and this is the actual cooler, this is the valve, and this is the intake. So what basically happens is exhaust gases pass through here. If you're into your model locomotives, this would make a great boiler. Yeah, so the exhaust gases pass through here, and they're cooled by the water flowing around these holes. Okay, so it's much like the reverse of a steam train, if you like. And then the gases come out of this end, okay, and they will go into this valve, and this valve will open and close, allowing exhaust gases into your intake through this pipe here and up into here. Now, if you take this pipe off your Land Rover and have a look inside there, you will see it's disgusting. I've seen pictures of them where the hole is actually about 1/2 inch diameter, where it's so bunged up with crud and crap. Now, this is EGR's exhaust gas recirculation. It's something that's put on all, I think even petrol cars have it now. And basically, in my opinion, it's a load of rubbish, because it's great when the vehicle's brand new, but then if you start to clog up the intake system as the vehicle goes through its life, it's going to become less and less efficient and become more polluting than it would have been if it didn't have this on. So it's just rubbish. Now, you can blank them off. There's a guy here, I'm going to show you this. This is I found this on eBay. This guy here, Bertie 1958, and he makes these EGR blanking plates. So whether you decide to use them or not is up to you. But I'm just saying that it can be done, and you can block off the EGR. Now, on a lot of vehicles, it will throw a light, so then you have to have the ECU remapped so you don't get the light come on. Some vehicles, I believe the 2.4 Tdci, on some of them, it doesn't even throw a light. So let's wait and see. If I should happen to fit them, that is, you know, if I should happen to fit the blanking plates, who knows. So there we go. So I'm going to get all this bolted on now. I'll show you with the camera around the back of the engine, and I'll show you where it all goes. Okay, so the first thing to do is connect the EGR valve to the actual EGR cooler. We need to make sure we get it the right way up. And it goes that way with this flange here facing downwards. So that's going to go on like that, okay? Now, if I was going to use a blanking disc, the blanking disc would go in here. You would blank both sides of the EGR. Okay, so that's going to go on like that. So we can hold this, I don't know if you hope you see what I'm doing. So we can hold that like that, and then put these 2 bolts into here. Okay, so after explaining the way it goes, I actually put it on the wrong way around, didn't I? So as I said, if I was using a plate, I would put it in there. And again here, if I was using a plate, I would put it in here between the exhaust manifold and the EGR cooler. So let's get this fitted down onto the engine. Okay, so this is going to pop on and get that wire out of the way. I fitted this, I think that's the temperature sender. So these studs are going to go through the exhaust manifold here, and then we've got a bolt which is going to go in there. That's an M8 by 25, which is crazy. It's longer than a lot of other more major things. So that's all going to go together like that. So now we can, if, as I said, I'll put the gasket in, and if I was going to use a blanking plate, that's where it would go. Okay, so there, that's it all fitted. 2 bolts in there, loose. Bolt in there, loose. 2 bolts in there, loose. 2 nuts on there, loose. Okay, leave it all loose and let it all wobble about and let it find its own place, and then you can do everything up. Next thing to go on is the inlet. So that's going to go on. That's got 2 bolts which go through this flange here, and I haven't got these bolts out of the box yet. So let me just look in my book. This is a book that I keep all my nuts and bolts written down in. So we've got the EGR to inlet pipe, it's 2 M6 by 14 bolts. Okay, so we're all nipped down now. So my suggestion would be nip these up first. Okay, and when I say nip, I just mean like finger tight. Nip those up first, then nip those up down here, the other end of this pipe. Nip up the clamping bracket, nip these up, and then go through these. Okay, and that way it's all going to find its own place. And I'm going to go and torque everything down. So I'm going to move the camera out of the way. So these are going to be 23 Newton meters, plus a bit. I always go plus a bit. Okay, and then change the 10mm socket, and these are going to be 23. Oops. And we've got this bracket in here to get the extension. And then we've got these two here, which I've already done. These here, this one here, and then we've got the M6s, which are 10 millimeters. Let's get on to those. So those two there. I forgot to put the gasket in there, didn't I? Would have done. That's all done. So now I've got to fit this map sensor, or I'm not sure what sensor it is. It's going to be measuring air, some sort of airflow or whatever. Inside there gets really crudted up with the EGR, so give that. Don't touch the thing that's inside there, but give it a good clean out and a gentle blowout with some carb cleaner or something. Give it a good clean. I'm going to put a little, tiny little rub of oil around the O-ring, and then this is going to go in the top here. Just give it a little twist and it'll sit down, and then we've got a little M5 by, I think it's 12. Oh, it's got a 7mm head, so we just wind that in there. Just gently nip that down. That's in place. In fact, I'm going to take that out and put some thread lock on it. Okay, that's that done. So I think now we're pretty much there really. There's a bracket to go on here which supports the wiring loom, and that's about it really. So let's have a step back and have a look at all the EGR stuff all done. Okay, so as I said, the exhaust passes through here, water passes through here. Good idea to have a piece of pipe this size with you if you're going overlanding or something, because if this splits, leaks, whatever, you could just bypass the hoses then. It's going to go through that valve, and then the valve is going to send, when it opens, it will send exhaust gases up here into your inlet, and then the exhaust gases come in here, they clog all this intake pipe up here, they clog up the whole inlet manifold, and then go and deposit a load of crap on the back of your valves, which is like I showed you before. So, you know, it's up to you whether you leave it open or not. But anyway, that is pretty much that. I'm just going to have a quick check and then see there's nothing else to do, and then we'll go from there. There we go then, guys. That's it. Done. That is the end of part 15 and the end of this 2.4 Tdci engine build. So now you can all do it. Just want to say everything I've done in these videos is basically my own doing, the way I do things, how I do things. Don't try and copy anything I do, anything you disagree with or whatever. And if you do anything wrong, I take no responsibility for it. I've just done this my way. For all we know, when I first start this up, it might blow up. Who knows? But you'll get that on camera, I can assure you. Not blowing up, but the actual first starting. I have actually got the starter motor in pieces because it was quite rusty and I wanted to paint it. So I'll do a little video on putting that back together, and then you'll know if you have to take your starter apart. I have actually had it apart once before. These do suffer with an issue of dragging. So it's like when you start your Land Rover, and as soon as it fires, you kind of get this noise where it's dragging and not coming back fast enough. And in mine, it was just a build-up of dirt and crud, really, after only 16,000 miles. So maybe it's better if they used a lot. This one's had very little use, so I don't know. But anyway, good for somebody to do rather than, you know, wreck your flywheel, wreck your starter motor, go out and buy a new starter motor. You don't need to. You can just take the old one out and clean it. It's a bit of a swine to get to when it's actually in the vehicle. I can tell you, it's horrible. There's about 479 coolant hoses in the way, and the wires are really difficult to get at. So it's, you know, it's worth, when the engine's out, it's worth stripping it and cleaning it if you're doing an engine job, or indeed if you're doing a clutch job or something like that. If you're taking the flywheel out, you may as well get to that starter motor out where you can get to it and do it. Just get it done, because from underneath the oil cooler gets in the way. I'll bring the camera round and then you'll see what I'm talking about. But the starter motor is actually located here in this recess, so when you try and come from underneath, the oil cooler gets in the way. From the top, the EGR is in the way, and you've got the engine mount there, and you've got all this pipe. You can see all the pipes there are going to be in the way. And if I remember, I'll show you that when we actually get to it, just to show you how difficult it is. But I will do a video on putting it back together for you. So there we are. Thanks for staying with me. Hope you've enjoyed it. And I think now we're going to start getting things actually put back into the chassis. Now that the weather seems to have finally improved, then we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you all soon with the starter motor assembly and then whatever comes next. Bye for now.